Guys, today we're looking at the top 5 most iconic and the best football boots ever released for a World Cup. Now, the 2018 World Cup is just around the corner and it's looking to be a pretty iconic one too. I envy the people who can kiss that in a couple of weeks. Anyways, the deal with brands and World Cups are that most of the big brands actually save their big, impactful launches for the World Cups because this is where they will get the most exposure and people will start talking about the boots and it will build up hype and ultimately they will sell a lot of football boots because of the World Cup. And I think it's fair to say that the boots on the list have really changed the way that we look at football boots altogether because, in my opinion, they've been some of the most influential and the best and the most iconic football boots that we've ever seen released. Let's kick it off with number 5 on the list, the very first Nike Mercurial that was made in 2002 for the World Cup in Japan and South Korea. It was inspired by a track spike, a sprinting shoe. It had a one-piece synthetic upper called Nike Skin, and then it weighed, of course, ridiculously low, 196 grams. And apart from simply being the piece of art that it is, it also inspired speed boots for many, many years to come with this here very minimalistic design. And even today, we can see the inspiration and the influence from the first Nike Mercurial Vapor on today's speed boots, which I guess it says quite a lot. And I bet you that every kid who grew up with this will remember seeing it on the feet of some other kid they were playing against and thinking, damn, he has to be fast. I love these. In 4th, we have the Nike Magista Opera 1, made for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. And you can say that it absolutely rocked the world of football boots. It took everyone by surprise with their pants down because I don't think anyone expected this high-cut one-piece knitted design that more or less really defined all football boots that we see on the market today because in one way or the other, they all have either a high-cut design or parts of the boot that are made with a knitted or woven material. Of course, it wasn't only Nike who had made knit back in 2014, but it really set a new standard. It was made with this one-piece fly-knit upper that was supposed to feel like a sock on your foot and also give you a bit of grippy texture for that creative midfielder. And back then, the hype was absolutely unreal. I remember it so vividly because people were just freaking out about it. And it's understandable. The silhouette was absolutely groundbreaking, the colorway was iconic, and you can say that the Magista changed the way football boots are made forever. Now, 3rd place goes to the Adidas Predator Accelerator that came out in 1998 for the World Cup in France. And just like on the other Predator boots, it had the rubber swerve elements that give you a bit more control and grip on the ball. But unlike the older brothers, Adidas actually made the rubber elements smaller and they integrated them more into the upper itself to make sure that the boot wasn't as chunky, while of course maintaining the grip and the punch you would come to expect in a Predator boot. And then of course, if you combine it with the iconic, the beautiful, the mesmerizing wavy 3 stripes, the, should we say, mandatory red tongue, the feature wear outsole, and then when you slap it on iconic players such as, to name but a few, David Beckham and Zinedine Zidane, who scored 2 goals in the final in these to win it for France. Well, then we're talking about one of those boots that people will always remember as one of the greatest. Number 2 is the granddaddy of football boots, the Adidas Copa Mundial. It's the oldest, by far, of the boots on the list. But funnily enough, it's the only one that's still around. It was made in 1979 for the World Cup in 1982 in Spain. And back then, it was a complete turning point because apart from this a really awesome kangaroo leather upper and of course the fold over tongue, Adidas also made its first sole plate with molded studs. And the reason they did it was that on the boot Adidas had made for the World Cup in 1978 that was played in Argentina where it was really warm and the pitches were very dry and very hard. Well, the players were complaining that the studs were simply too long and that the ground was too hard for the studs to really take it. So Adidas sat down and they looked at the pitches in Spain that were also expected to be really hot and really hard. And then they implemented these slightly softer, shorter molded studs. And I think, being around for 39 years really speaks for itself. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most legendary and most iconic football boots ever made. I mean, even the flipping name, Copa Mundial stands for World Cup in Spanish. It almost doesn't get much more iconic than that. Now, before we move on to what is, in my opinion, the most iconic football boot ever released at a World Cup, I wanted to give a special shout out to some other really iconic and very, very important football boots. The first one being the Adidas F50 Adi Zero from 2010 that, just like the Vapor, really set a new standard for speed boots, weighing a ridiculously low 156 grams. And even by today's standards, that is really, really light. Of course, to a lot of people, I could also have taken the Predator Mania from 2002 instead of the Accelerator that really refined the concept from the Accelerator and also looks really, really iconic. There is, of course, also the Nike Mercurial Superfly 2 Elite from 2010 as well. Now, the boot itself wasn't particularly iconic or awesome or anything like that, but I brought it on the list because simply it headlined the very iconic Elite pack that really, for me, set a new standard for World Cup pack designs. And also, of course, it featured one of the stupidest technologies ever with the moving Nike Sense stud. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the Puma King that came out in 1968 and has since been worn in many different variations, many different models by some of the best players in the world. Eusebio, Maradona, Pelé, and the list goes on. And finally, I also want to give a bit of a shame on you. I'm pointing my finger at you to the Adidas F50.6 Tuned. It came out in 2006 and the idea was that you have a Lego-like build-it-yourself concept for your boots. Now, the idea was good, but the execution really wasn't. The boots were terrible. No. Number one, the most iconic football boot ever made for the World Cup, in my opinion, is the Nike Mercurial R9 that was made for the 1998 World Cup in France, just like the Predator Accelerator, by the way. And back then, ladies and gentlemen, it completely turned the boot game on its head. This is the reason the Mercurial Vapor 1 was made. This is the reason the Adidas F50 even exists. It was made to really utilize R9 speed and agility. It was made with a synthetic leather upper, the first of its kind, that was called KNG 100. It featured this really grippy tactile coating to give you better touch and more grip on the ball. And then it was made with this outsole that was engineered for explosive hardcore speed and to be really, really responsive with bladed studs. And ultimately, it was a boot that weighed 240 grams, which by the standards back then was absolutely unheard of. And looking back, seeing this boot hanging around the neck of Ronaldo as he was completely heartbroken over losing the final, and featuring these iconic colors that Nike have reused again and again and again and again. This is one of those boots that's not only really important for the evolution of football boots, it's also iconic, and I think it's one of those boots that would be recognized by so many people. For me, this is a clear winner. So there you go, my friends. What is, in my opinion, the 5 most iconic and most important football boots ever released for the World Cup. But again, that's just what I think. What do you guys actually think is the most iconic World Cup boot ever? As always, you should let us know in the comment section right down below. Now, if you want to go and create history in the current boots and make those iconic, you can actually go and buy all the World Cup boots by clicking the link right over there. We've got Nike Just Do It pack, Adidas Energy Mode, Puma Illuminate, Mizuno Passion Red, New Balance Etruska pack, all the World Cup boots, click right over there. Now, you can also, of course, go and watch some more top 5 videos by clicking right down here. And then, guys, do yourself a favor, kill some of the downtime between the matches during the World Cup by subscribing to our channel with the notifications on, of course, to see all our latest videos the moment they drop. And with that said, guys, I'll see you around. Signing off. Cheerio.